an exclusive Breaking Pirate Radio News live event.
Jaffe Ryder here with Pirate Radio Podcast and a special breaking news event update from Carolyn Rose Goya. I'm not sure if she's based out of Jefferson City, Missouri at this particular moment, but I do believe she's located somewhere still within the state. So we've got her on the other end of the line here. It's great to finally manage to get through to her. Carolyn, it's been a while. How are things going?
Yeah, it's been kind of interesting. It's been more than a coincidence that it's been difficult to get the internet up no matter where I was at. And I am still in mid-Missouri. I'm not in Jefferson City at the moment. I'm actually in a no-tell-motel at the moment, actually relaxed so we can have a nice conversation. I spent a couple days sleeping in my car because it's been an interesting sojourn still. I've had to go from a couple places because unfortunately, when you are a targeted individual, the targeting does continue to follow you from place to place, and I'm still dealing with the fallout and blowback from the slander piece that still needs to be rebutted, and I'm preparing right now some information for a law firm that specifically targets government agencies for misbehavior and unethical or illegal behavior, and they are considering taking my case and have continued to ask me questions that I'm in the process of writing up while I'm sitting at the hotel. So it's actually been a very good, very eventful last couple days following being in my car for a couple days and then following a kind of a harrowing physical attack at one point a couple days ago. So things have been the typical roller coaster that leads to a life that's never had a boring hour yet. And like I said, there's still miracles and magic around and still amazingly good people. I finally got a replacement iMac, so I'm back online. And thanks to Carol, who's in the background with us, I still have my telephone, so I still have my smartphone, and she's been like the best sister anybody ever had. That's Carol Sloan, so I want people to know there really are angels out there. And Jaffe, you're one of them too, because I know you've helped me out too, and a lot of the folks on Pirate Radio have been morally supportive, even those that, nobody's won the lottery yet, so we haven't been able to get the entire radio network up for either of us yet, but I still am working toward that goal, that we're all going to be back on the radio and offering solutions to everybody, both in podcast, shortwave, and everything else, so we can kind of get some truth and reality out there and try to break a little bit of this matrix down that's been floating around.
Well, we are here now, and we're putting some product together, as it were. We're doing this interview with you here, engaging you at this particular moment, a little Q&A and whatnot. But let's back things up to just for people that maybe aren't too up to speed on your case. We first met last year sometime, I guess, is maybe in the fall, as I recall, basically. But I came across there was an alert that you sent out, some sort of urgent notification that caught my eye via Facebook. I think it came in through the Fan Fringe Alternative News Network group that we've got put together there on Facebook. We also actually have a copy of that in another group via minds.com, which is rolling along quite nicely now. But that definitely caught our attention. And as it turned out, why don't you just give people the lowdown and kind of a thumbnail sketch? It's quite a drawn-out story, really, and just a really harrowing and mind-boggling ordeal. But just a quick overview and a recap for people that aren't really too up to speed on what went down in Jefferson City, Missouri, on this historic hemp plantation last year, I guess, was what it was, and just where things are, how things stand at this particular moment.
Okay. Yeah, we're almost up to the year anniversary, and I'm trying to stop a bulldozing, so it's an imperative moment. I might even back up a little bit first, just to let people know, just to give them a little bit of background. I had worked at McDonnell Douglas for about 15 years. I worked on a little bit of everything. I worked on estimating. I worked as a senior design engineer. I worked as a project manager, and ultimately I was the artificial intelligence fellow for the astronautics division, which at times it was more artificial. I don't know how intelligent, and I was never a fellow. But it was an incredible opportunity. I got to meet cosmonauts, astronauts, and work on things, and had access to archives and libraries and in the suppressed technology and science. I would give anything right now to be able to get back to that library with the questions and knowledge I have now. I would certainly do so much more and different research. I went in there blind and just opened up and went through everything. But you have to remember the time frame I was in, I was actually digging through microfiche and even microfilm. So to do it today with the technology, well, I'd give anything to be a mouse in that library again. Then you have to jump forward. I took care of my parents. That my dad had a stroke. I didn't want to put him in the dog kennel. I took care of him. Took care of my mom, my aunts, my uncles, my neighbors. Had a lot of experience with that, where I was working in hospices in the VA, and some of the targeting actually started way back in St. Louis, where I was from, and that started because after taking care of bedridden people, I had enough assets. I mean, I used to go and take care of other people's bills at the veterinarian and all that stuff, and at one point Mizzou was telling me I was up to contributing $13,000 for other people, and that was just what was on credit cards, not the cash that I did, because I just couldn't stand the change that we had in our veterinary science, where we were teaching veterinarians that if you can't pay for the vet bill, they volunteer to kill your animal for free. I couldn't stand the idea that we were teaching people that, and young veterinarians coming out of school, that life was that unimportant, that money was more important than respecting life. So anyway, I had worked on all that, and then I started getting involved because I had assets. I also bought a $200,000 house in St. Louis, which is, we have very cheap housing in that area, and I had plenty of money in the bank. I invested well. I didn't start out rich. We started out, my first annual salary at McDonnell Douglas was $18,200. I wasn't making six figures or anything. But I got involved because I started out looking into selling water, the utilities to hidden subsidiaries of people like Bayer and Siemens, and what they were doing with the water, and got my water turned off as I was sending information to other radio stations. And Paul Harvey did a radio show with me about it, and they came out and shut off my water. And then I started investigating municipal ordinance creep, which is something I really wish people would pay attention to. It's really one of the ways they're destroying our rights, not just in the United States, but across even Western Europe, and I'm sure probably where in Asia, where you guys are at, it's probably the same thing there. They use municipal ordinances to control people and to, basically trespass and do whatever they want. And with municipal ordinances, they get the advantage that they can take your house, your pets, and then you use family services, they can take your kids. So we really don't own anything anymore. I'm not sure we ever did, but we certainly don't do now. So things were getting into that in St. Louis. Plus, I had grown up, I had been baptized Ukrainian Catholic, and you probably won't run into many of us, and I had gone to Roman Catholic schools, and I got into looking into the child molesting. It bothered me. I had a couple friends who their lives went basically south, and I'm like, what happened to you guys? And they both admitted to me that something had happened, and I started doing research, and to be honest, it got ugly fast and deep, and I did a lot of underground research and basically found out about the child sex slavery before it hit the fan. What I was finding out was just staggering and stunning, and it was big names, very wealthy people. It wasn't just a couple of harney-toed priests. It was all denominations. It was all religions. It was, the biggest connection was money. These were all very wealthy people. A lot of it tied into Luciferian rituals, and kids did disappear. Kids were used for years. Kids were transported between Philadelphia, Milwaukee, Detroit, St. Louis, Boston. It was ugly, and it got ugly fast, and I got death threats, and we had death threats tracked by the phone company to the law firm that represents St. Louis County. I mean, it was crazy. It really was. And I didn't back down. I didn't make a penny off of it. I gave all the information to lawyers, and of course some of them made money suing the Archdiocese and other individuals, but what I got was death threats.
Carolyn, is this the Franklin cover-up era, or just after this particular time period, or what are we looking at exactly?
It would have been Clinton was president. because I got into a little bit of the stuff, and I've been able to follow up on a little bit of it that had to do with Lampe, Missouri. Carol knows about that, too, on the phone. This was about during basically the Clinton years when he was president, because I worked at McDonald all through the first Gulf War, and I had worked through the Falkland Wars and all that. I tried to get into nuclear disarmament, so in order to do that, you have to have the credentials. So I had to work on Tomahawk and some other nuclear weapons to do that, and I worked through the Reagan years, which were insane. We went to, I swear to God, we were always going to DEFCON 4 or something. I mean, we had so many mad scientists and military guys that wanted to go nuke somebody. I'm surprised we actually survived those 8 years. And then the 4 years of Bush. And like I said, I started looking into it. It would have been the time frame when Clinton was president. So I think Franklin was a little bit older.
Oh, yeah. Franklin cover-up was the Bush-Reagan era, so...
Yeah, so this one was after that. And I didn't know it was going to get into the child sex slavery. I wanted to help my two friends that I had known in grade school whose lives had gone south, and I didn't know that it was going to be bringing in some of the most richest and most powerful people in St. Louis and tying it to the other major cities, because... You sitting there, I would go to these country clubs and sneak around and get the information as to who was there when all this, eyes wide shut crap was going on with these kids. I couldn't believe it. I mean, here's these people, as in Walker, as in George Walker Bush. The Walker family is very big in St. Louis. There were executives from Emerson, executives from Bell Telephone. There were executives from Southwestern Bell, executives from McDonald, Douglas, and politicians were deeply involved. We had captains and majors in the police department. I mean, the names would, the more I got into it, it was just a little bit frightening, but definitely staggering. And I started just getting death threats galore. I mean, it was just bizarre. And at the same time, I had started doing work with Kathy Mucci on Out There TV. I started doing research for her, and she had me as assistant producer for a while, and I would write the questions and whatnot, and I started writing questions and forwarding them to George Noria, Coast to Coast. I could not get him to cover this at all. He didn't want to get into it.
Pizzagate's been big news the last little while, and a lot of people, the debunkers, they like to really focus on just the Pizzagate story itself with respect to how, well, it's just, just this one pizzeria, Washington, D.C. based kind of shop, and this trying to discount or trying to explain away everything that occurred within that context. What they don't want to talk about, though, is the larger picture. How, as you're pointing out here and drawing to our attention, that it's a really structural, kind of institutional, systemic, really chronic, kind of widespread phenomenon. It's not just one little pizzeria in Washington, D.C. It's far more than that, is it not?
Oh, yeah, and I actually think they try to denigrate it with the Pizzagate thing because, see, then it sounds like it's silly or, oh, well, it's just some sort of juvenile thing or people getting pizzas and drugs and stupid stuff. No, this is very organized, and I use the word Luciferian seriously. These guys are doing rituals, and whether any of us believe that anything of what they're doing is real, it doesn't matter because they do. They believe in the rituals they're doing, and they believe that assaulting these kids and the fear and the terror that they create, the rituals, the breaking down of these kids' personalities, sort of like an MK Ultra, you're creating kids with multiple personalities because it's the only way they can survive what's happening to them. They know what they're doing, and they swap these kids. They really do have little black books as to, this kid's for this kid's for that, and whatnot. And kids are killed. Kids do disappear. This is life and death stuff. This isn't a joke, and most Americans don't take it serious. Other people around the world have been taking it serious because they realize it does happen. I mean, it's horrible, and some like the House of Saud has been guilty of this for years. And there's other countries where, you can go to the Thailand. Look at all the little kids that have been used there. It's just people have at least tried to understand it. In the other countries in America, we're just strictly in denial.
The House of Saud, isn't the Trump administration just recently, or aren't they in the process of finalizing, putting the finishing touches on a massive, nearly almost $500 billion arms deal with the good old Saudi royals? So, but secondly, on top of that, because I know you take the ball and you really like to run with it, but before, we hand things back over to you here, just as a side note, what do you think of the work that the Trump administration has been doing in targeting these lower level, because that's really what it seems that they're going for and focusing their energy and efforts on, but the lower level pedophiles? Have you been following that at all?
Yeah, I've been following it a lot because I wanted to see what happened, and we got a couple groups that I've been trying to follow to see what's actually being done. The whole thing about the Trump administration, it's sort of like, I wish people, we got people that in groups that are running around arguing about Orange Hitler and all this nonsense. People have got to understand that this is a two-party crime syndicate. There is very little independence at the level. I mean, we're talking about, these are figureheads. And if anybody thinks that get me bailed out 5 times Trump is an independent man, they're crazy. I mean, he gets bailed out by the same banksters. And if they think bloodlusting, we came, we saw, he died, skull and bones woman, Hillary would have been a better choice, they're crazy. We're talking about a faux two-party, one-party crime syndicate that runs our country with basically the fascists that took over, the day that the fascists won World War II, which was November 22nd, 1963, when they killed Kennedy. That's when they really won World War II, and that's when they really started integrating and taking over our country, which is why we're a fascist oligarch now. And people don't want to accept that. They just really don't want to. And they want to, and I think just like a lot of this stuff that Trump is doing, just like Pizzagate, these things are distractions from the serious stuff that's really, really going on. Because you still can't get most people to look at the geoengineering that's going on. You can't get people concerned about Fukushima and the extreme dangers that are going on out off the Nigerian coast and the Nigerian Delta. You can't get people concerned about the 4 or 5 areas off of China where the ocean is being killed. You cannot get people concerned that the Horizon platform is still dumping tons of oil and they're still putting Corexit in the Caribbean. You cannot get people to understand that the Great Barrier Reef is dying. You cannot get people to pay attention to the absolutely horrendous Agenda 21 program of the vaccines. I mean, I'm in mid-Missouri in a town with 5 colleges, brags about being a liberal college town among a bunch of rednecks, and these idiots, the commercials every day on the radio telling...
Seems we may have lost Carolyn once again. She was cutting in and out there a while ago, so hopefully we'll manage to regain the feed. Carol Doan Sloan, do we have you on the other end? You perhaps might be.
Oh, yes, I'm on the other end, and I'm very sleepy. This is all very interesting, but I'm dozing.
Oh no, I'm not sure how. I have no idea how someone could be sleepy with the kind of information that's being unpacked at this, this particular moment.
Carolyn's life has been so incredibly intense. It's a series of constant evacuations, running for her life, trying to understand but not having the time to process her life as each event occurs.
When did I go off?
Oh, just when you started to, you just cut out you were going to get into the meat of the matter, but just...
So then it went off again, huh?
Yeah, let's
well,
look.
That sure happens conveniently, doesn't it?
You're putting Carol Sloan to sleep, unfortunately, but
it's because I'm so exhausted.
Yeah. Hang on there, Carol. If you drift off, that's not a problem. We'll hopefully get this captured. And I guess the idea, we're hoping to stream it out actually live tomorrow. Our regular time slot, we had a bit of a scheduling issue this week and just some logistical problems. So we'll definitely see what we can do. I've got like doctor's appointments here and the whole bit, but we'll see if we can get things up online for people. They can actually tune in at the regular time tomorrow. I know it's all spur of the moment and off the cuff, but sometimes that's the best sort of...
Were you able to record any? I mean, we're up to 34 minutes at the moment.
No, we're fine. I think we're doing good. I mean, there's sometimes weird things do pop up on this end where you wonder, like, what happened there and why is there nothing going on here? But it looks like we're good and we're fine. as far as things go. So let's just continue. But where I want to kind of reframe and revisit here is just to back up to where you found yourself in Jefferson City. You're on this historic hemp plantation. You've got this therapeutic housing scenario in place where you're helping to treat vets for PTSD, I guess is one of the things, along with autistic children. Using cats, and I think there was a dog or two involved as well, where you're using pet therapy, which had rendered, and a lot of people talk about this, how it's very positive results. Children with maybe behavioral problems and all kinds of issues.
Well, kids in the neighborhood.
Sure. So let's just revisit and kind of reset the stage and just take it from there, if you would.
Great. When we get to Jefferson City, what I was trying to do, and I tried to, work with the powers that be, but it was the perfect spot. The building's from 1851. It was a historic hemp plantation. It's a miracle site, literally, because the doctor that started it broke all the rules. He treated both Confederate and Union soldiers, which in the same building, in the same beds, and right next to each other. And that was seen as something drastically that you didn't do. And then he even treated the black soldiers, and that's how it gets tied to Lincoln University, which I thought was important because it has become a lot of a nursing and teaching school. It was the first black university on the western side of the Mississippi. It was a land-grant university started by 5 cavalry officers, 5 black Union officers, the one who had a miraculous recovery in my house. And you can stand there and feel it. I mean, it's this amazing place. And what I tried to do, it had become a crack house, and I'd stood up to the drug dealers. I got it away from the slumlords. I was trying to clean it up. I was going crazy, cleaning the black mold, fixing it up. I had gotten some guys who were off the street. It's a state capital, and they deny there's any homeless. That was one of the problems. And they had chased out, which I didn't know, previous people who had tried to help homeless. They're in total denial that the capital has any homeless. But there's several that live down by the river. There's probably 300 people. There's other people that live in buildings. I could take you to a dozen places just today, right now, and show you where there's homeless. But, they're in denial. I was trying to do something different. One, I don't believe we have to have the government in everything we're doing, but I did try to follow their rules. I tried to get a license for the therapy cats. My dog was also becoming a therapy dog for me because I've had surgery on both eyes for detached retinas, and she was an incredible dog, and I haven't seen her since June 23rd last year. They came unannounced. They came without warning. It was a SWAT team. They used battering rams. They took me out in my underwear, wouldn't let me put on shoes, pants, my glasses, couldn't get my wallet. Still, I had to replace all that. I still haven't replaced my glasses. I was hurt. They almost shot the dog. They took the dog. I haven't seen it. They would not let us put the animals in their carriers. Instead, they made a farce of the raid. It took them weeks to collect the animals. They chased them outside. Animals were killed. Animals were hurt. These were trained, gentle animals. There were other men living there that were helping, like I said, the guys who were homeless, PTSD soldiers. We had guys who had Asperger's, some other people, a young man who had brain cancer. There were autistic kids in the neighborhood we were working with. They chased them out of the house. They wouldn't let us put them in the carriers, so they wound up collecting the local Pharaoh colony and neighbors' cats and my cats, and I was told you accept them all. Whoever you don't accept as yours, we'll kill them. They held me in jail for 5 days without any recourse. If it wasn't for Carol here on the phone, I don't know if I would have got out alive, because they were telling people I abused animals, and they told the cell block that, trying to get me hurt. They taunted me constantly that animals were dying or dead. Unfortunately, they did hurt some, and they did kill some, and all the animals were healthy before they got there, and we've been able to prove that. We've been able to get the prosecutor to admit there is no evidence. They could not show us a search warrant. Holding me for 5 days, I've not been able to get my house back. They've tried to give the house land deed to Habitat for Humanity, who was aware before they got involved that the house land deed was not a clean transfer. They cannot just take your house and give it to someone else. They can't do that. And they're saying they want to condemn the house and bulldoze it, but they know that there's evidence inside there. They've already stole my iMac, which had all the stuff about the child molesting in it. Then also other research I did because I was working on alternative energy. They stole all the prototypes of the energy stuff. That's the second time that's happened to me. In St. Louis, they stole the prototypes and my house was set on fire twice and bulldozed. So now they want to bulldoze a second house I've been in. My dad's dog tags are in here, my family photos. Evidence of what they did to the cats are there. We've got them on tape admitting that they put trash in the house, that they put mattresses and other stuff in the house after I was taken away, after they did not arrest the men. The men were chased away, and they wanted just me arrested because then they created a slander piece after they damaged the house, terrorized and traumatized, and they abused the animals. After they threw all my garden supplies, manure, and everything into the house, they put raw eggs in the house, they put garbage, and then they did a videotape trying to say that that's how we were living, and it's basically stating I was living that way alone as a crazy cat lady and a hoarder, and that was done as an orchestrated, scripted piece that's still out there, and it still continues to cause me problems. It really does, and I have to get that rebutted, and hopefully I'll be able to do that shortly now that it's taken almost a year to restore getting a computer, because I've had to be in survival mode. I had to fight fiercely to keep the dog and the cats from all being put to death, but they distributed some of them to total strangers for $10. Anybody who came up that had $10 could get one of them, even though some of the autistic kids' families wanted them. The guys who lived with me wanted them. I wanted them. They gave some to Monsanto Research Lab, so they obviously thought there was something about what I was doing with these therapy cats. They refused to give us an accounting on where all the animals are, who they killed, or who survived, or where they are. 4 other people had animals in the house. We were foster caring them. They never got their animals back. To this day, we don't know the accounting, and that's just obscene. How can you go into someone's house, take their animals, and refuse to say who you have or who you've killed and what you've done with them? It's just arrogance. I mean, you have to go to court, and it's very difficult. All right, now I'm trying to get this pro bono, a law firm that just goes after the government to take the case. It's very difficult. There is no public defender for your rights. You know, you can be O.J. Simpson and, slice somebody's head off, and if you can't afford it, you can get a public defender. You can be a meth lab and get a public defender. Our system sucks. You'll wind up, having a plea bargain or something. But if you just are trying to fight for your rights or to show that the government has done something wrong to you, there is no fund. There's no public defender to fight for your rights or the animals' rights. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, what they did was animal abuse, and the FBI is supposed to consider animal abuse a felony. And we've talked to the FBI, and they're like, oh, this is really political. We don't want to get involved with this. I've got people from veterans agencies, all the delivery people, from everything from FedEx to UPS to the mailman to pharmacy to government agencies that were there for the veterans, all vouching that the house was in fine condition. The animals were in great condition. The people were in great condition. Since this happened, 2 of the guys, they were all threatened to get out of town. I was threatened to get out of town. 2 of the guys were beaten so badly they've been hospitalized, and one has to get eye surgery. So, I mean, when they tell you to get out of town, they're not messing around. This is very much fascist America. This
Carolyn,
makes Gestapos look like nothing. Yeah, go ahead, Carol.
The one young man witnessed the killing of the cat.
Yeah, he was so scared, he actually hid during the raid. He's actually tried to commit suicide since this happened.
There was a cat that he actually witnessed being actively murdered.
Yeah,
as he was hiding
right.
and worried about his own life, he witnessed one of the SWAT team members kill a cat.
Yeah, he was hiding. He heard them saying they were looking for my iMac. He didn't know what an iMac was. He wasn't computer literate.
Did he hear them mention anything about she's investigating one of our local child pornography or pedophile rings? We got to get that iMac. There was no more. It was just simply we got to get the iMac. That's it.
Yeah, they were looking for the iMac, and they took all the radio equipment, all the servers, all my files, and the computers. They took all that, and when he was hiding, and what's really messed him up, because he had a rough time. He's had a very rough life. The cat that got killed was actually, I had assigned the guys to give them some sense of responsibility too, as they were getting over their own issues. They were assigned various animals. The one he saw killed was his. And he couldn't stop. He couldn't defend them. And it was the plainclothesmen. There were 12 SWAT team members with the battering rams. I mean, it's ridiculous. They said they came to count cats. Why would you need a 12-member armed assault team? They came with a fire truck, ambulance, news people,
helicopter. I think there was a helicopter too, was there not?
Yeah, it was ridiculous. They're supposedly to count cats. That was what they're saying. And there was at least a dozen other guys in plain clothes. The ordnance people acted in control, though the police were also involved. The animal control lady admitted that I had applied for a license, that they had been there and cleared the house on multiple occasions because I had let them in to look around. They had cleared the house. There was no problem with the house. The Office of Aging had been in the house.
No problem with the house until after the SWAT team showed up, and then suddenly everything went to the dogs.
The city, when I was trying to get funds, because there's money in that area, because it's a very blighted area. There's gunshots all the time. The first week I was there were bullet holes and people shooting each other. I had applied for things. They would never give me permits. They didn't like what I was doing. They did not. The police at the time were telling me we didn't have a problem, but the city kept saying, we don't have homeless and we don't like you highlighting this. And I wanted to be a clearinghouse for information on industrial hemp. They didn't like that. They asked me if I was going to be smoking my building because I tried to get a permit to use hempcrete and hemp siding. And they didn't know what hempcrete was. They didn't have a clue.
They were serious in asking you this totally ridiculous and ignorant question. Were they trying to be funny, asking you if you're planning to smoke?
Very insulting. Very insulting. And they kept telling me a woman could not be in charge of a project like this. And they would just walk in the building on me without even knocking. And they walked into me dressing more than once, and I called and complained. They were just intimidating. They didn't want us there. They didn't want me there. They thought I was an activist. I had applied for a permit for an urban garden, and they said, we don't do that kind of stuff here. And I said, well, this is ridiculous. And the kids, I had gotten seeds from the extension from the University of Missouri. I had the space. I had 3 churches that were going to be involved with it, that were local churches that were going to help me do this. It was going to be very organized. We're going to be teaching the kids about survival and victory gardens. You know, the kids were all excited.
And for victory.
Yeah. And they didn't want this, and they would come at all hours, would sit there, and they'd want to complain, oh, you can't have this here, you can't have a laundry pull up and hang out your laundry, we're not going to give you a permit for a fence, we're not going to give you a permit for this. They basically refused everything. You know, and I'd say, well, wait a minute, no, you can't just keep changing the rules. And they said, yes, we can, because we can subjectively decide. And I said, wait a minute, you're not judge and jury. And they said, yes, we are. You know, so they made it very clear. They just didn't want a project like this. Even though this was an extremely blighted area, seriously, I literally had to chase drug dealers off my front porch. I had to chase them out of the house. They would be underneath the lamp post in the alley and in front of the house selling. Oxycontin is terrible. Opiates are terrible in this area. You can get hydrocodone, you can get heroin, you can get Oxycontin, Percodan, anything you want on that street at any given hour. It has to be controlled, and it has to be payola, because you can't live there any amount of time and not see where the drugs are coming from and what houses are busy. Across the street from me was a gal who worked for the city, who had 5 guys with ankle bracelets, and they were still selling dope. And I don't care about weed. Everybody should have weed. Medical marijuana would save us a lot of trouble. And that's why Henry Ford and Diesel wanted hemp fuel. Industrial hemp would cure America's economic problem. We wouldn't have this faux petrochemical economy that causes all of our problems. But they didn't want that. And the idea of therapy cats, they said there is no such thing. We had them on tape. We had people go in there and try to rescue the cats from the animal control and say they specifically wanted to see the therapy cats. And they would just laugh. They go, oh, they're not therapy cats. They're just cats. And that's why I said they literally were just selling them or giving away for $10 a piece. Unless they thought you were associated with us, then you could not get the cats. At one point, they were saying they were going to cost $5,000 just to get any of the animals back. And they were telling the people who had given me the dog it was going to cost them $5,000 to get the dog back if they wanted it. The 4 people that had foster care animals were poor people. One of them was in the hospital. That's why we had her cat. They wouldn't give her cat back, and the woman was dying of cancer. They didn't care. They laughed in her face. She's never seen the cat again. None of the foster cats were returned. Neighbors' cats were also picked up. They never got their cats back. That is cruelty. There's no reason for it. Once you get targeted, though, and if you get labeled as an activist in the United States, I've tried to teach people this for over a decade now. Municipal ordinances are used to steal your rights. They can come on your property, they'll put animal feces on your doorstep, say they smell something. All they got to do is say they have an anonymous tip, and they can trespass on your property. They can seize your house, they can condemn your house. Americans have, and this is true for other countries too, Canada, Europe, and where you guys are at. I think you're actually a little saner than we are, Jeffy. But people have got to stop this. It is not this, they got everybody watching Hoarder on TV. People love anonymous tips. They can call on their neighbor or their ex-girlfriend or boyfriend. We've got to stop this. No more anonymous tips. And if you're going to go to court, it's got to be a judge and a jury. No more of this plea bargaining bullshit. We have to demand our rights, so do jury duty. Stand up. When I asked this guy about the ordinances, they said the book is 6 inches thick. That's insane. How can you have an ordinance book 6 inches thick and expect citizens to be aware? I mean, you can't even make a compost thing out of pallets in the state capitol. They won't let you do it. They stole several $1,000s worth of stuff off the exterior of the property. I had 2 barbecue pits. I'd put up a tent over Memorial Weekend. I had put out phone lines for all the guys to call home. We had connected guys back with their families, put their clothes in a bag, so we did laundry. We also got some of the charities. Everybody left with food, some clean clothes. The police said we weren't doing anything wrong. There was no violence. There were no drugs, no hard alcohol or anything. And the guys that were at our house, when they did the raid, these guys, one of them, this is the first time he had ever had any period where he hadn't had any violence or problems. He was taking his medication. He was talking to his mother and grandmother again. After that, he's been nothing but on the street. He's been arrested again. He's up in Chicago. They had an undercover cop put him on a train and told him to get out of town, and he got beat up on the train and has had to have surgery as well. So he's the other guy with the surgery. The other guy came down the steps and tried to help me the day I got arrested. They made him run away, and he takes anti-seizure medicine. He's an American veteran. They made him run away without a shirt, no shoes, no ID, no medication. People couldn't find him. He was so scared, he went back down by the river and hid for like 5 or 6 weeks. And, he's got mental issues. He didn't need that. And they laughed at him. One of the guys we haven't been able to find. We don't know what happened to him. And the one that got it's needing the surgery now for his eye socket, when he went back and tried to look for cats and tried to see what was going on, that he literally got so badly beaten. And they targeted him. They said, "We know who you are." And the police have not arrested anyone. He got beat up twice. And they just said, well, maybe you'll finally get smart and get out of town. That's how they handled it. They made no arrest of the attacks on him. It's just insane. And the TV station that worked with them played the video of the animals outside and were making jokes about how the cats were running in and out of the windows after they terrified them out. So these animals were inside a house with 6 adults and other people coming and going. They terrified them, scared them outside, and the TV station put it on TV just as a crazy old lady, cat lady, and they kept saying my age, and she's not married, no children. Oh, look at this poor sad thing here. It was all bullshit. That's what they saw, but what's really frightening is that they used it as the opening of their news week after week, and nobody seemed to be upset that, wait a minute, why did they chase the cats out of the building? Why are the animals now that were gentle, trained, kind, indoor domestic animals now on the street? That's animal abuse. But see, Americans are so used to this lamestream fake news, and they're used to these hoarder shows and all this mind garbage that they give to people. They didn't even seem to object to that. Or that if I was mentally ill, if I was a crazy cat lady, if I was a hoarder, that would mean I'm mentally ill, and maybe I need help. Do I need a SWAT team and 5 days in jail in my underwear? And possibly beat up in a cell block? I mean, they tried to prove, and they couldn't come up with anything wrong with the animals. They said the dog had 2 fleas on it. So that means, for all the people listening, if you're in the United States, you could be jailed, your animal taken, possibly even killed, because if they come to your house and it's got 2 fleas on it, you could be charged with animal abuse.
Pirate Radio Podcast. This is an update breaking, originally packaged, I guess, as a breaking news event. This time around, it's more a case of how we finally managed to get back in touch with Carolyn Rose Goya. So, as stated earlier, we're going to work on streaming this out live tomorrow in the regular time slot, 8 p.m. Friday night, Pacific Standard Time is how that works. So for people living here in Asia, of course, that's 12 noon, Tokyo and Seoul. There's a number of issues here and a few points that I've put together here, just sort of jotted down while you've been just sort of unpacking things. First of all, it was a warrantless arrest and detainment, so completely illegal and unconstitutional. That's one of the reasons, I suppose, none of this has gone to court, from what I can gather.
They tried, but we were able to show there was no evidence. And
right.
The judge said there was no evidence, and the prosecutor said there was no evidence, us doing anything wrong.
Right.
And I'm still trying to get them to stop. They want to bulldoze the house, and I'm trying to stop that.
So much is, and that's hashtag save house, I guess, is how we've got things set up from that end of it all, at least the sort of a hashtag campaign that you're hoping on better promoting, and maybe, who knows, it could get to the point where things go viral. Ideally, that would be quite wonderful to see.
We've got video of these guys admitting what they did as far as putting the stuff in the house. You know, I finally got a new computer. I mean, this has taken this long to get it. And that's what people don't understand. Once they put you on the street and you're broke and you don't have your ID and you don't have your Social Security card, you don't have your glasses, you can't get a job, they've slandered you, they make you homeless.
And they treat you like the lowest of life by walking you out to the cop cars in your underwear. Right. Making fun, making faces, leering, saying rude things to you behind your back or through your face.
Wasn't that all captured on, they filmed that all through local television too, I believe, you being marched out to...
The television station should be charged with slander. But I'll tell you, it is very difficult. My attorney was threatened. When I had a moving guy that wanted to help come get the stuff out of the house, he was told he would lose his license. You know, and like I said, two of the guys who live there have been beaten so badly they have to have surgery.
Perception management, Carolyn, too. I'm sure you know a thing or two about that. So that is so much of what I seem to see going on here with the way that they've kind of, set things up, causing just such utter chaos in the wake of this illegal house invasion. Totally ridiculous and over the top, of course, just the magnitude of things. But the way that the house everything was completely made to just run amok and create as much chaos and spreading garbage everywhere, as you said, and presenting that sort of image to the public, where, as you pointed out, there were previous inspections that occurred from the municipal end of things. Everything had seemed, on several occasions at least, there was no problems at all. But so much of this is what seems to be occurring more and more with these municipal ordinance issues really kind of ratcheting up a lot more, it seems, since the Unpatriot Act of the Bush administration. Yes, I say that for reasons. Very unpatriot act. Actung, perhaps, if some might like to put it. And that's the thing, too, is we got to learn really to, rather than just parrot the sort of memes and language, catchphrases that we're programmed with from the corporate mainstream media end of things, we've got to learn to take more responsibility and control of our lives and the words and the language that we choose to use. So that's one of the reasons it's referred to here on the Robin Hood as the Unpatriot Act. Another issue, too, of course, is the swatting. I'm not sure if you've heard about this. Of course, you had a SWAT team just from out of the blue come in and really terrorize you and your the people that were there with you on the premises, along with the animals. And you talk about, we hear about the war on terror. Well, you would think that would be a prime example of how, if there was any sincerity or legitimacy to this catchphrase, once again, the so-called war on terror, that this would never have occurred in the first place, because the war on terror was proving to be so effective. You would not have been terrorized, so it would never have happened to begin with. But swatting, have you heard about this, where they call in? I'm not sure how this works exactly, but SWAT teams just from out of the blue show up at people's doorsteps. It's kind of like a prank almost, but it's a really dangerous prank too. And it can be used as a way of kind of settling scores as well, I'd imagine, kind of getting even with people, or just lashing out at anyone that you've got an issue with, setting them up and having a SWAT team sent to their door. Just a total false alarm, but they come there, weapons drawn, and in full force with hooded faces and God only knows what else, smashing down doors and, all these other sort of heavy-handed tactics that they choose to employ. Have you heard about this phenomenon where this is happening more and more?
Oh, yeah, this particular area, too. And, St. Louis was notorious for what happened with Ferguson. But, we're only an hour and a half out of there. But this mid-Missouri area, too, there's been tons of homes. They'll apologize later and say, oops, sorry, wrong house. They'll be breaking in the house with battering rams, shooting the people's dogs. And it doesn't matter if it's a Jack Russell or a pit bull. They shoot them and kill them anyway in front of the family and children. And it's happened repeatedly here. Several years ago when I had come down here, I used to rescue animals for the fire department. And I was staying at a local hotel close to where I'm at now. And I literally watched them taser a big black guy off the bridge where he wound up falling off and dying. He was a vegetable for years. He was going to go back to jail, and he was despondent. He wasn't threatening anyone else. He was despondent, and he was on the bridge. It was a bridge over a major highway. He was a big man, and his family was trying to get him to calm down. They tasered him, literally, until he staggered and fell off the bridge. I mean, I sat there and watched it. It was insane. Right about that same time, they were giving all these toys to these guys. They all got tasers and army tanks, and they got to play Army Man in the middle of America. And they were rolling out these, personnel carriers everywhere. And there was a rash in Missouri of people getting tasered all the way to death. There was 2 other young men. One guy was supposedly drunk, and they just kept tasering him until he literally went into seizures and died.
But how's that possible? Tasers are non-lethal forms of
they're
non-lethal, aren't they? The weapons?
No, they are. They can be lethal. One, if there's certain ones that are staying attached, if you keep triggering it, you can do it till you give somebody a heart attack.
Yeah, no, I'm saying that a little bit kind of tongue-in-cheek, obviously.
They think it's hilarious. I mean, these cops think they have toys. I offered to open the door and put the animals in their carriers. Why was a battering ram even used? I mean, it's ridiculous.
Theatrics,
and like I said, we have the evidence. That's why I wish we're going to have to get people to make more contact again to protect that building. They got to contact Habitat for Humanity to protect that building and say there's something wrong here. And I'm trying to get the law firm, and I'll give you the information and you can put it together if you want when you put this podcast together. If people will contact these guys who may take the cases pro bono, that's all they do is fight government. Because if they bulldoze the house, they're destroying evidence too. And I think that's their whole goal right now.
Whatever you can do, just, now's as good a time as any. Just any of the contact information or particulars as far as the legal firms or just the Habitat for Humanity contact information. Anything you
Well, yeah, the lawyer is David Rowland. He's on Facebook, but I mean, he hasn't, I don't want to badger him right now because he hasn't accepted it yet. I'm still filling out some paperwork for him. Joshua Shrimp was my incredible guy that dealt with them as far as just showing them that everything they did was illegal and that there was absolutely nothing illegal that we did. We didn't even violate an ordinance. I had been careful, but he's really an excellent attorney, Joshua Shrimp. And by the time the amount of hours he put in, he was paid some money, but he probably made less than about $2 an hour, given the just ungodly hours he put in. He's been fighting for honest drug laws. He's gone as far as Vienna and the United Nations arguing for, just drug laws across the planet. But I mean, he's an idealist. He was threatened too for helping us. And there's another woman, Audrey Smolin, she's trying to help. There's another woman in Jeff City now being badgered, and she was trying to help her too. And what people don't understand is, we got to get these movie stars, they're saying they want to donate to something. We need to have funds set up to help Americans, and in other countries too, when you're fighting for your rights. Because when you're up against a government entity, whether it's you're fighting for eminent domain or you're fighting something like this, and they really do use ordinances. I saw it years ago when there was the first Bush-Clinton debate because Washington University was in St. Louis, and I was one of the people invited to be a monitor or something else there, just some silly thing. Activists then were targeted, and they used ordinances to keep them off the street and arrest them. So, I mean, these ordinance things are bizarre because these people they really are brown shirt and Gestapo. That's why I said that all they got to do is say they had an anonymous tip. That's why we have in the law that you have the right to face your accuser.
Exactly.
Well, anonymous tips and hotlines deny you that.
That goes back to the oldest, some of the oldest legal codes in the world, I believe, thousands of years ago, where you have the right to face your accuser rather than just having someone faceless, anonymous person or individual, party, what have you, making these baseless accusations. Yeah, this is Nag Hammadi. I'm not sure if that. No. That's
you're right. That goes back to that. It does go back to that, and allowing these ordinance police to subjectively decide. You know, I'm not going to charge my friend, I know him, I drink beer with him, or he goes to church with me, or his kid goes with me. So they don't arrest those people. And they apply these ordinances only to whom they want to. And that very often it becomes a political weapon.
Yeah, very subjective and arbitrary. That's how the law is applied. That's how it works. If they're not interested, they'll just completely ignore it. So it's always political. Everything is political. Who gets targeted and who's, where they just choose to ignore people, certain cases or what have you. So let's stop kidding ourselves here, folks. Everything is political. Every breath we take, in fact, is political. It has a spiritual dimension as well, too. You can call it religious if you want. I prefer spiritual. But also, you made your constant kind of referencing these, so-called activists. Myself, just going back to how I feel it's really important that we try to come up with better ways of phrasing things, or just the slogans and terms, catchphrases that we use. I prefer the term engaged citizen, really, rather than activist per se, just because that seems to, when you use that, have that label, it just kind of rubs some people the wrong way, or just immediately they've got it's a kind of knee-jerk reaction within their mind. That's the conscious sort of mental reaction that a lot of people have where they, jump all over it. It's like, oh yeah, just one of those kind of, those radical activist types.
Troublemaker.
Again, So, yeah, exactly.
It's a troublemaker.
Engaged citizen. Engaged citizen.
It's another label like conspiracy theorists that they create to make you look, to denigrate what your efforts are. We got to get more people awake, and it's hard to do. You can't just grab people by the shoulders and shake them. But I mean, when people realize this is actually a perfect example of also how we treat the mentally ill, because we were helping autistic, we were helping people with PTSD. 6 people were made homeless, and they didn't care. And 2 of them have been violently assaulted since then, and they didn't care. And if you're homeless, you're a criminal in America. Given what happened to me and, the slander piece the television station did, it's even hard for any of us to get a place to live because people will believe what they saw on the news. And I tried to reach the news. They would never, ever interview me on that channel, ever. But they made sure that was on there constantly. And the fact that we got the prosecutor to say there is nothing, and we had him put it in writing, that was never on the news. They would not cover that. Our news, I think it's hilarious that they're finally saying fake news. I mean, we've been saying that for decades. Since Project Mockingbird, they've owned the journalists. I mean, it was always yellow journalists out there and yellow journalism. I mean, going back to, Samuel Adams' days, the guys squaring off among the founding fathers. What we have now is actually worse. It's just like Goebbels and propaganda, and it's just like Casey and them bragging about Project Mockingbird that, they control it at the national level. Well, at the local level, too. The mayor goes on this news channel and sings to the local readers, because they're not really reporters. And I contacted that news station and wanted to give my side. My lawyer did. They didn't want to. They wouldn't talk to us. So, I mean, they're not even being journalists. They're not giving both sides. But it's the audience's fault, too, in that they don't ask for it. They don't demand real journalism. They don't demand both sides of a story. They want to hear the gossip. Oh, look at that. Isn't that terrible? This must be this crazy old, batshit crazy woman with a bunch of cats,
Tabloid journalism is one of the things, or one of the ways of, kind of couching things, or at least responding, or, seeing it in that context, obviously. But Operation Mockingbird, isn't it interesting, too? The mainstream media never talks about it. We hear about the fake news, sort of, that whole thing has been going a little viral as of late, but they don't ever want to tell you about Operation Mockingbird. It's like the elephant sitting in the room. It's like right out there on full, for anyone with eyes to see, or, ears to hear. My God, people. I mean, all you have to do is just type it into your I wouldn't say, like Alex Jones often likes to say, oh, well, just Google it. Fuck that. It's like, don't Google it. You have to go on DuckDuckGo, for crying out loud. We vote with our mice, our computer mice. We vote with our feet and our money. Other than that, there's not much else. I really don't put much faith or personal, like the credence in the actual value of votes per se. A little cynical from that end of it all. That's a bit of a side issue, of course, but yeah, with the computer mice, that's a big thing. And why should we vote for Google, Alex Jones? Come on, man, get with the program, or get with a new program, get with the more kind of cutting edge and hip program, and use, things like DuckDuckGo, obviously.
Right, you're right. You're right. But the thing is, it's just like Project Mockingbird they mentioned it briefly right after they were cooking up the Unpatriot Act, which had been written 15 months before 9/11, so they knew when it was coming. And they made these guys vote for it without allowing them to read all 1,500 pages under the threat that they were going to declare martial law if they didn't vote it in place. But you got to understand, if you listen to lamestream media, when they were doing this, whenever they brought up anything about, should we be concerned about losing our independence in our news? Are we going to lose our rights because of the surveillance? They would bring up, the Unpatriot Act is required because of all these crazy rules that followed those church committee meetings, that terrible, terrible church committee that exposed all of our wonderful spy techniques, and now we just have to get back to where we can protect ourselves because nobody wants to admit it was a false flag. And here you have denigrating one of the bravest people we had in our politics, Frank Church, who did the church committees, which revealed the assassinations that we were doing around the world of other leaders, and how we got rid of Mossadegh, what we did in Argentina, what we were doing in all the banana republics. He was showing how we were killing Americans, how there was a connection between what happened, the murder of RFK, MLK, JFK, and was never picked up. I mean, the House Committee on Assassinations identified that there was a conspiracy in all three murders, and the Justice Department dropped the ball, and most Americans have never read the House Committee or looked into it and realized that our Congress did look at it and say, oh, yeah, you know what, Oswald was a patsy, and, oh, well, by the way, there was a conspiracy to kill MLK, and, yeah, there probably was a conspiracy to kill Robert Kennedy, too, but nobody did anything. Frank Church came out and was revealing all this stuff that Colby and Casey, as CIA directors, admitted that they had been bribing all three of the big CBS, ABC, and NBC, that they had also controlled all these journalists, Lifetime, Newsweek, Wall Street, the economics, all this stuff. They admitted it, but most Americans, they were oblivious. We didn't have C-SPAN yet, and it wasn't on the first page of the newspapers in most towns. Most people, they're just like, huh, what, And we have the deliberate dumbing down of America. I mean, Charlotte Isby and Anthony Sutton both and other people have done a great job of documenting how they really did intentionally downgrade the education system within the United States. And they do control both the education level in the newspapers and what is covered. And one lady did try to interview me and give my side from another TV station. And when she wanted to follow up, she was told she would be fired. I mean, and if a simple state capital mayor and those folks can do that to their local news people, and they're making some pretty good money, some of them have six figures, these news guys. But let's face it, if they do the wrong thing, their TV station will be in trouble. It could lose its license, and this girl would probably never be able to get a job again. So, and they have no problem intimidating people.
It just shows you how corrupt things really are then, I guess. And this is just a kind of micro scale sort of scenario, giving us an example, very anecdotal sort of specific case example of how rotten things really are. So another case that we're kind of looking into and promoting as far as working on getting more exposure behind is the John Ford UFO political prisoner case. We did a story on that last year. We had a bit of a roundtable. We're going to be following that up just next week, as a matter of fact, to let our listeners know. They can look forward to that and be sure to tune in if interested in getting and staying back up to speed on things as far as where things stand with Mr. Ford. It's the same kind of thing, though, where you find a lot of stonewalling and it's the corruption in Suffolk County, New York, seems to be pretty extreme, to say the least. So it's actually renowned as one of the most corrupt. Is it a borough? I think is how it's referred to in the States.
Yeah.
I'm not sure myself, being Canadian here. It's a little different kind of.
Yeah, and on the East Coast it's called boroughs. Yeah, I mean, we don't have them out here, but
Let's just, Carolyn, let's just get up to speed then where things stand with you now. You've managed to kind of get yourself back up on your feet a little bit. You've got a computer. You've got a phone. Right. This kind of makes you a little dangerous, I'd imagine, in some respects.
Well, yeah, they're going to be nervous now because now I'm actually armed and I can actually rebut things. And I'm going to be rebutting what happened on Channel 17. I am getting the paperwork to the lawyer, and I'm really, really praying that the pro bono attorney takes the case and really fights it. I want enough money to start over, and I want the guys that got kicked out, I want to get them off the street. I want to get accounting to find out what animals are alive, who got killed. And I want accountability. The 4 people who other animals needed, they need to know what happened to theirs, too. It's just cruel. And I'd like to know what happened to the dog. I mean, I'd like to know what happened to all of them.
You did refer to the Justice Department just a few minutes ago. Once again, from my standpoint, largely it tends to be more of an injustice department. Same thing, not just in America, but Canada, and you pick just any nation clear across the board. These wolves in sheep's clothing, they like to adorn themselves in the clothes of virtue and integrity, but really, there's some serious morality issues and issues regarding corruption and so forth that, I mean, you can fool some of the people some of the time, I think is like one of Abraham Lincoln's better known little quips that people have heard about. So that's the kind of deal there for sure. And you can't fool all the people all the time. But, and so much, once again, has to do with perception management. The word government, in fact, too, let's not forget it just means mind control. Is really what it comes down to. So then the question is, who's going to govern who? Are we going to allow third-party interests and parties to dictate how we are to run our lives, including the things that we put into our bodies, whether it's the food that we eat, the water we drink, the air we breathe? Seems like everything has pretty much been weaponized on pretty much every level as far as this full-spectrum dominance business is concerned, and the war on humanity. But that aside, once again, just going back to where things stand with you at this particular moment, we, of course, over on Minds.com have a group. It goes by the name of Operation Earth Angel, and we're hoping to pick up more traction from that end of things. We've already managed to actually score a bit of a victory, and people over on Minds have come through and helping this one gentleman who's a Canadian expat living in Poland with his Polish wife and young daughter. She herself, the little girl, was hospitalized for malnutrition a couple of months ago. They are living on a really minimal budget, starvation level of things. Basically, the real irony, too, is that he's trying to repatriate himself and his little family there back to Canada. Well, the Trudeau government, it seems, they're more than happy to welcome all sorts of Middle Easterners, largely Islamic type individuals, some of them bona fide refugees, others more, who knows what exactly, but, forking out all kinds of money, thousands of dollars every month, I guess is what it comes down to. $4,000 a month is one of the figures that I've been quoted. It might be a little more than that, in fact. So the Trudeau government has more than enough time to deal with and accommodate thousands of these Middle Eastern families, and putting them on Canada's military bases, if you can believe that. That's a little odd. I'm sure I'm not the only one wondering what that's all about. They're not able to turn their sights and extend a helping hand to Raw Rights, is the handle that he goes by there over on Minds.com. Him and his family. So it would just be a few $1,000s to have them repatriated back to Canada and get them set up so that they can kind of work on restarting their lives back in the country that he was of origin, where he was initially born and raised and called home for so many years. The economy kind of collapsed there. He was working, I guess, in the ESL kind of sector of the economy, and things kind of went sour there. So his wife has a job, but she really struggles, and he does a little bit of freelance stuff on the side. But so anyways, the point is that, yeah, we have been successful on that, as far as that is concerned, with helping him out. And if you were to get engaged and more active there in that group on Minds.com, I'm hopeful that people would rally around your cause if you could get your particulars and all the information out there so people could get clear on where it is that you're coming from, and the fact that, no, you're not just some scam artist that's coming along trying to bilk people out of their finances or, whatever money it is that they have to offer. Because, a lot of people do that, where they've got these scams at the Flim Flam.
Well, I think they actually have people do that intentionally too, just like they have disinfo guys, because then it muddies the water. It drains the money that could be going to help really good people. I think there's people that are sent to do that. And then it also gets everybody suspicious about helping. So, I mean, some of that's actually part of setup as well. They got no problem. I mean, we have trolls all over the internet that are there sending out wrong information and damaging people that are honest. At the same time, they're intentionally drawing attention to some other faux issue just to, like I said, funnel off the funds and funnel off the energy. So, I mean, you're right. I will definitely be trying to get over there because, now that I'm here, now I'm only at the hotel for another day, and then I'm moving again. I got somebody that gave me a little bit of money so I could actually be in the hotel. I could take a shower. I could hook up the computer and get this paperwork done. But, you can't stay in a hotel all the time. You wind up going broke. Like I said, I'm trying to move out to another place, so I will definitely put more stuff up there and in our little pirate group, and also on my Facebook page, I'll put some more stuff. I'm trying to be discreet because the bureaucrats have told me they've been using my Facebook page to glean information. So I'm trying not to telegraph everything we're doing there, if you know what I mean.
And when they got a hold of your phone, too, Carolyn, and they...
Oh, yeah, it was really funny. When they had my phone for those 5 days, so it was really funny. They knew exactly where I was going because my lawyer was trying to get it forensically checked out, and then my phone just fried itself, so we never could. But at one point, when I was trying to use the GPS to go anywhere, it was telling me my home location was the police department. So obviously they were in control of the phone. It's like, I was trying to get a direction from where I was at.
Conspiracy theorist, come on. It's just a coincidence. It's a coincidence.
Oh, it's hilarious. It's just amazing, too, to me that it was like, how can they possibly use the excuse that they were there for counting kitty cats when the very first thing, and we had the video showing all my personal property being taken out of the house and on the front porch and thousands of dollars of stuff stolen, and here's an iMac and everything else sitting on the front porch. What has that got to do with kitty cats? It's just outright theft, and it's just, unconstitutional there's not an aspect of it that's legal at all. I mean, nothing is done right. Even if they thought there was too many cats, or they thought that they, disagreed, or they thought being therapy cats was a trauma to the cats or something, whatever. That's not how you do it. You would send animal control, and they knock on your door, and they talk to you, and they inspect your house, and they do that stuff. You don't send an armed SWAT team to kick down doors and storm a house to count kitty cats. I mean, you just don't do that.
Well,
it still staggers me that people didn't see that aspect on the news, that snippet aspect of the newscast, and not ask questions.
Apparently that's what they do in Jefferson City, Missouri, so you would think in most cases, that's not what you're expecting, but some locations around America, Canada, it doesn't matter where you look, the injustices that occur are quite widespread, all too common, and unfortunately, we've got to do all that we can to hold the bastards accountable, really, to expose these crimes and see that they're held to account. So, the pushback is really critical, and without that pushback, where people stand up, where people rise up, where people speak out and say, wait a minute, what's going on here? They're going to continue to do whatever they can to get away with these crimes and just unethical and unconstitutional behavior. So on that note, though, I'm not sure if there's anything more that you'd like to share with people. We got to call things a wrap here. I've got, as I said, a pretty busy schedule here today. We're going to work on getting things streamed out, hopefully, what we've discussed here today with the rest of the world in our regular time slot. The weekly 90-minute Pirate Radio podcast presentation. Is there anything else, just on a final note then, that you'd like to share with people as far as, contact information or just some really key issues that they should really lend their sights to and try to focus their attention on?
Yeah, reach me through Facebook. Go ahead and PM me if you've got any questions. You can put the questions on my page or personal message me on Messenger. My email is simply Carolyn Rose Goyda, and we'll have, CarolynRoseGoyda@yahoo.com. Obviously, any advice, we're open for other people's suggestions, but we're going to have to really get down on the National Habitat for Humanity, who's not going to want to have the bad publicity about this. I'm working with some black organizations to try to get the house protected as a historic black site because the city doesn't care about the black history, and it's very important that this be saved, the building itself. I think the animals deserve some justice for those that died so they didn't die in vain. And I said people have got to start doing jury duty. They got to learn what jury nullification is. They've got to stand up in their own towns to stop anonymous hotlines. They've got to stop municipal ordinance creep. It's just as important as paramilitarization of police. Start demanding juries, not plea bargains. People have got to understand that you've got to help people with funding to fight for the rights because justice isn't free.
Thank you to everyone who has tuned into today's show. We are going to, once again, do everything we can to work post-production on this and have things stream live via YouTube in a regular time slot. Carolyn, you hang in there. All the best. And we appreciate your being a part of things, coming on board the Robin Hood here today, having a chance for the world to hear the latest update to your continuing saga. Thank you very much once again. Happy sailing.
Thanks, Jeffy. Thank you.
Aye now, there we be, having carefully looked over each of our navigation panel instruments, checking every level, switch, knob, and dial. By all accounts and indications, we indeed see it's time once again to drop anchor inside the bay and draw an end to another week of Pirate Radio podcasts. Don't forget, if you're looking for a little more free-flowing action, we've likely got another great Rogues Gallery after show coming up next in either Google Hangouts or Skype. Also, if you've in any way enjoyed or found yourself benefiting from the shows we've tirelessly produced over the past 16 or so odd months, you might want to drop by our new Patreon tip jar page and lend a little support. We've picked up a couple official patrons in the past few weeks and would really love to keep those numbers growing. For the same price as a large flagon of cheap pirate grog, you can help keep the Robin Hood sailing smoothly along each month. All it takes is $1 a week for anyone to unlock our regular behind-the-scenes premium Rogues Gallery content. Coming up next week, same time as always, our second annual John Ford UFO Political Prisoner Roundtable. Minds.com Satori D joins us on the evening of the 16th to discuss the Infinite Imaginarium project and more, with mystic and spiritual flying rainbow lasagna adventurer Aurora, having also all been penciled in for what promises to be an almost too hot to handle month of June. If you yourself have an intriguing idea for a guest or story, you can either drop us a line directly over on WPRPN.com or fire us a quick email via pirateoneradio@gmail.com. WPRPN.com network subdomain links are also now available. Great for artists, musicians, podcasters, bloggers, or pretty much just anyone looking to boost their online visibility, presence, and reach. Basic accounts can be launched for only $15 a year. Staking your claim now helps not only strengthen you and the network, we're also looking out for the little guy. That's right, folks. Half of all WPRPN's profits are redirected right back into the hands of the people who really need it most. Community charity. After all, we are the Robin Hood. You can further embark on your own personal pirate journey by liking, subscribing, commenting on, sharing, and following any of our main social media channels via Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Google+, or Minds.com. So don't forget to become engaged. Until we meet again out on the high digital seas, I'm your host, as always, the ship's Chief Communications Officer, Jaffe Ryder. Tally ho.